Welcome to the lecture on Chapter 9. In this chapter, you will be learning about forms. The learning objectives for Chapter 9 are as follows. Describe common uses of forms on web pages. Create forms on web pages using the form, input, text area, and select elements. Create forms that provide additional accessibility features using the access key and tab index attributes. Associate form controls and groups using the label, field set, and legend elements, and create custom image buttons and use the button element. You will also use CSS to style a form, configure new HTML5 form controls, including the email, URL, data list, range, spinner, calendar, and color controls, describe the features and common uses of server-side processing, invoke server-side processing to handle form data, and find free server-side processing resources on the web. There are two components to forms, the HTML form itself and the server-side processing of the form. The HTML form is what the user sees on the web, and it is what you use if you want to order a pair of shoes. The server-side processing works with the form data and sends an email, writes to a text file, updates a database, or performs some other type of processing on the server. This is a list of some of the HTML tags used in building forms. The form element is the container tag. It identifies the start and end of the form with open and close form tags. The input element is a standalone tag that is used to configure several different types of form controls, such as text boxes, radio buttons, checkboxes, and buttons. The text area element is a container tag requiring an open and closing tag. It creates a text area for the user to type information, such as entering comments on a form. The select element is also a container tag requiring an open and closing tag. It configures a select box with a drop-down list of options. The option element is also a container tag requiring an open and closing tag. It configures the options that are available in the select box. There are two required attributes for a form element. They are action and method. The action indicates where to send the form information when the form is submitted. The method is how the data will be sent. There are two types of methods. The GET method appends the information to the URL and sends it to the web server. The POST method is more private and transmits the form data in the body of the HTTP response. This is the preferred method. The input element is a standalone tag with no closing tag. The input element with the type of text will create an input text box. The text box form control allows the user to type in text such as names, email addresses, etc. The text area element configures a scrolling text box. Some common attributes are name, ID, calls, which stands for columns, and rows. The input form control with the type set to submit is used to submit the form. When clicked, it triggers the action method on the form element and causes the browser to send the form data to the web server. The attributes for the submit button are type equals submit, name, ID, and value. The reset button form control is used to reset the form fields to their initial values. A reset button does not submit the form, it just resets it. The attributes are type equal reset, name, ID, and value. The input tag with the type set to password will hide the text as it is entered. Again, it is just an input box, but with the type set to password. It also has attributes of name, ID, size, max length, and value. The input field with the type set to checkbox will allow the user to select one or more of a group of predetermined items. The attributes are type equal checkbox, name, ID, checked, and value. The checked attribute will allow you to set the default value for the checkbox as checked. This can be seen as a little sneaky. When the box is checked by default, the user is required to actually uncheck the box if they don't want it checked. You might have seen this in the past on a form where they are asking you if you want to sign up for their newsletter. The box may be checked by default, so if you don't realize this and do nothing, you will start receiving their newsletter. If you do not want the newsletter, you actually have to uncheck the box. The input field with the type set to radio will create radio buttons. Radio buttons allow users to select exactly one item from a group of predetermined items. An example might be for capturing age. You might have a button for under 18 and another button of 18 or older. These are mutually exclusive and only one can be selected. Each radio button in a group is given the same name but a unique value. The attribute options for the input radio button are type equal radio, name, ID, checked, and value. If you want the radio button checked on load, you would use the checked attribute. So as a reminder, checkboxes are used for multiple items that the user can select, such as desired pizza toppings when ordering a pizza. Radio buttons are used when only one item can be selected. Radio buttons are used for mutually exclusive items. In this example, the question is to select your favorite browser, and they are allowing the user to select just one. The select element is used to create a drop-down select list, allowing the user to select one or more items from a list of predetermined choices. Select lists are frequently used when asking for the country or state information from the user. The select list is used in conjunction with the option tags that we will discuss on the next slide. The option element contains and configures the options in a select list. The attributes are value and selected. If you want one choice to be pre-selected, you would use the selected attribute. Here is an example of a select list. You can see the option elements that live inside the select element. These options create the drop-down list the user selects from. This example came from the W3 Schools website. As a reminder, the W3 Schools website is a great resource for people new to coding. Up to this point, we have learned form basics. Now we are going to explore techniques to increase the accessibility of form controls, including the label element, field set element, legend element, and the tab index attribute. The label element is a container tag that associates a text description with a form control. This is helpful to visually challenged individuals who are using assistive technology such as a screen reader to match up the text descriptions on forms with their corresponding form controls. There are two different ways to do this. The first example places the label element as a container around both the text description and the HTML form element. When coded this way, the text label and the form control must be adjacent elements. In the second example, the for attribute is used to associate the label with a particular HTML form control. This is more flexible and does not require the text label and the form control to be adjacent. This is a format I suggest you use. Please note the value of the for element must be the same as the value of the ID, or the code won't validate. The field set element is a container tag and is used to group form elements on a page. The legend element is also a container tag and is used to create a label for use with the field set element. Using these elements to group form controls together enhances accessibility by organizing the controls both visually and semantically. Imagine filling out a large form requiring a lot of information where nothing is grouped together. The field set and legend elements can be accessed by screen readers and are also useful tools for configuring groups of radio buttons and checkboxes on web pages. In this slide, the snippet of code on the top generates the form on the bottom. You can see how the field set element contains all the personal information, and the legend is what identifies this area of information. Some users may have difficulty with the mouse and will access your form with a keyboard. The Tab key can be used to move from one form control to another. The default order is to move between form controls in the order they are coded on the web page document. This is usually appropriate, but if the tab order needs to be changed, this can be accomplished by using the tab index attribute. For each form tag, you would add the tab index attribute, beginning with 1 and continuing in numerical order throughout the page. There are some new HTML5 form controls. The input type email is similar to the text box, but it configures an email address input form control. If the user tries to enter something other than an email address, an error message will be displayed, indicating that they need to enter an email address. Common attributes are type, name, ID, size, max length, value, placeholder, and required. The URL input form control is also similar to the text box. It is intended to accept any valid type of URL. Only browsers that support the HTML5 URL attribute value will verify the format of the information. Older browsers will render this form control as a text box. Note, the browser doesn't verify that the address actually exists, it just verifies that it is in the correct format. The telephone number input form control is also similar to the text box. Its purpose is to accept a telephone number. The input element with the type tel configures a telephone number input control. There are other controls discussed in the book. The last one that I want to address in this lecture is the calendar control, which is achieved through the use of the input type date. When the user clicks on the down arrow, the calendar appears, allowing the user to select a date. I want to touch just a little on server-side processing so you have a basic understanding that some scripting is needed in order for a form to actually be submitted to the server. This slide lists several technologies that are used to submit the form. We will be practicing with the PHP file. In addition to sending forms, you would need scripting to perform tasks such as searching a database, placing an order at an online store, sending a web page to a friend, or subscribing to a newsletter. In order to submit a form, the form element needs two attributes, the method and the action. As mentioned previously, the most secure method is the post. The action contains the script to actually submit the form. A server-side script has been created for use with this text. The script URL is webdevbasics.net/scripts/demo.php. This script was created for student assignments and will accept the form data and return it to you so you can see how the data will be received. In the above example, where it shows my name, my email, and my comments, those are the name attributes that you assign to the form to help identify the user's input. This is where that attribute comes into play. You can search the web for some sources of free server-side processing services. This slide lists just a few options, such as FormBuddy.com or Wufoo.com. And that wraps up the lecture on Chapter 9, covering forms.